Congratulations, you have found the Lambcast, the official podcast of the large association of movie blogs, also known as the Lamb. The Lamb is the largest collective of online movie blogs and podcasts with 2,000 members and counting. Every week on the Lambcast, various members of the Lamb community get together to talk about our favorite subject, movies. So bookmark the Lamb and follow us on social media. Be sure to join us each week to hear a lively discussion of films and movie-related talk from our members. Join the flock at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Good afternoon, podcast listeners. Are you interested in learning more about the Church of Jesus Christ? It's okay if you're not, because that information is only incidental to what we'll be talking about today, the A24 Psychological Horror film Heretic, starring Hugh Grant. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lambcast. I'm your host, Richard Kirkham from Kirkham A Movie A Day. Heretic follows two missionaries of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who attempt to convert a reclusive Englishman, only to realize he's more dangerous than he seems. Joining the discussion this week are two missionary sisters here to spread the gospel of horror films. Ladies, I think it's time. Time for what? Time for enlightenment. First up, Lisa Leaheey from Rabbit Hole Podcasts.
Hello, hello. I would like to know if your wife is around, Richard. Is your daughter around? She's usually here, right? I can talk to her.
Yeah, there's a woman in the house. You can enter.
Somebody's got to be there. Is one of your dogs female? I can hang with her.
Yes, there you go. That would cover it. Sadie's downstairs asleep.
Perfect. Is she making a pie?
She is baking. And Nicole,
so talented.
Nicole Ayers from Mad Lab Post. Do you like pie?
I love pie. I prefer apple, but I'll take blueberry. Happy to be here in my magical undies.
We won't ask you to show us those. Thank you.
I think Pie is one of Darren Aronofsky's best films.
There's a pie lover if ever there was one. Also joining us for this...
Too irrational. It's a bit too irrational a number for me.
Also joining us for this theological discussion, James Wilson from Blogging by Cinemalite. James, I can tell you're a very spiritually curious person.
Well, I certainly wasn't expecting the Spanish iteration.
And finally, believing that truth is just a twisted version of what we want to see, Howard Casner from Pop Art has chosen the door of belief to step through. Thanks for joining us, Howard.
Yeah, sure.
All right, our two Mormon missionaries, confident Sister Barnes and timid Sister Paxton, arrive at the home of a reclusive Englishman, Mr. Reed. When they step inside his home to share their testimony, things begin to get a little weird. We're going to start with our general thoughts, and Lisa, you were the first one to sign up for this show. I know that you are a horror maven, and this was intriguing to you, so let's start with you. What did you think of Heretic?
I loved it. I loved it all over the place. This has been such a gift of a year for horror fans. I mean, authentically, the only film that has disappointed me this year was Alien Romulus. And I mean, Maxine isn't for me. I don't like Mia Goth, but she's excellent at what she does, and it's a good movie for what she does. But good God, movie after movie after movie, I'm so excited. So it's like, to see this one, I was expecting. I'm like, all right, the shoe's going to drop. It's got to drop. Nope. I was so thrilled with what Hugh Grant did in this film. I was so thrilled with the cinematography. Even the little hiccupy things in this film that I'm sure we'll get to that make it, all right, well, not brilliant, but I still enjoyed it so much. I'm just, as a horror fan, to have so many films, one right after the other, be so satisfying. I'm just riding a high all year.
Well, I know that you're high on horror films. James, on the other hand, is not a horror aficionado, and I know that's... I appreciate him volunteering to join the show because of that. He took an extra effort to do something that runs contrary to his nature. It's not his bailiwick, or as we're going to be talking about later.
Despite the fact that I wrote all about horror films all the way through Halloween, so
yes. So, playing against type, James, what did you think of Heretic?
Nice segue there, Richard. Like I said, I'm not like Richard said, I'm not a horror fan. I do appreciate them. I just haven't appreciated them in the last 40 years. But I will say that Heretic was intriguing for the first 45 minutes. And then it kind of falls down the stairs. I wasn't crazy about it when I right after I got out of it. I was very excited about it because it had it was right in it was exactly how I feel about organized religion, and it said things that I believe. Now, unfortunately, they come out of the mouth of a complete madman who is probably, a few chapters and verses short of the Unabomber. But that's what excited me about the movie. 24 hours of deep meditation, however, made me realize that it has a great first act, but it doesn't. The second and third acts, biblical pun intended, just don't work, and are in fact could have been something completely different and something better. But then the guys who made this movie also made 65, and they wrote A Quiet Place, and they're really good at elevator pitches, but they're not that great at seeing an entire movie through to an end and having a really satisfying conclusion. There's a lot of things I like in this movie. Like Hugh Grant is just wonderful. All of the two Mormon sisters are terrific. Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East. And the cinematography is great. I did like a lot of the shot choices. And that first 45 minutes is great. But the rest of it falls a little flat.
Nicole, I have no idea what direction you might be going in. I'm not sure that you're a horror fan or not, but I know that you saw the movie, and I'm sure that you have opinions.
Which door do you choose, Nicole?
Belief or disbelief?
I chose both. I chose,
nice.
Like James, I chose belief in the film going in. I had high hopes and high expectations, but I do think that the film did a good job in painting some disbelief when it comes to organized religion. Like Lisa, there are a lot of things that I love about this movie. I think as someone who does not like horror, I am not a horror fan, although I do favor some horror movies. I love the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and a couple of other popular horror movies. I think they built tension really well here in Heretic, especially since gore and violence isn't necessarily my favorite thing to see unless I'm watching an action movie. I can stomach it, but I don't like to see it in a horror film since I'm not a fan of it. So I like that a lot of the tension here and a lot of the fear in horror was the fear of the unknown and not knowing what's behind door number 2 and not knowing what's down the stairs and not knowing what's down the hallway, especially in that first act when the girls are dumb. I live in the city, and it's like, if you're uncomfortable, like, why would you go into another room? But we'll probably get into that. But like, the lights went off in the first act, and they think they see him down the hall, and it's like, is it Mr. Reed or is it not Mr. Reed? So I like that a lot of the fear and horror in this film is directly tied to the viewer's imagination sometimes. So I do like that. I do like Hugh Grant in this role. I think he did a phenomenal job as Mr. Reed. As sick and twisted as he is, I do think that he does show up as a necessary figure in this particular movie, as a character, as a villain that you love to hate, kind of.
That's a good
I
start.
do have more thoughts, though.
Yeah.
I do have more thoughts.
Well, we've got lots of other things to talk about, so it's just a general introduction. That's good. Howard, how about you? Which door are you choosing?
Well, on Facebook, I said that I don't think I'm the target audience for this film. And that was based on how other people are reacting to it, as well as my own initial reaction. I think technically it's marvelous. The cinematography is great. The direction is great. The editing is superb.
Mhm.
But the religious discussion is so outdated, is so behind the times. This is something that would have been interesting to me 50 years ago in college when you're drunk at 2 a.m. arguing these things.
You're not allowed. You're not allowed to say everything that I'm going to say. So.
And what I said was that the first part was like being in a theology class where the professor has absolutely nothing original or unique to say, that he's way behind the times, but you can't leave the class because you might fail. The second half is so preposterous and ridiculous. It never makes one bit of sense. And I dare anyone to come up with a backstory that could possibly make this present day story remotely believable.
Okay.
But the reason why I don't think I'm the person for this is because on Facebook and even in reviews, and I go on YouTube, they say, oh, this is a brilliant dissection and debate over religion. And I'm going, no, 50, 60 years ago, it might have been a brilliant debate over religion. Today, it's just horribly, horribly outdated, and I found the conflict rather boring.
All right.
Maybe it's an iteration of
Exactly.
older theology class to introduce to the newer generation.
That's it.
Maybe it's a fourth sequel script.
Well, I'll start off by saying that I like this film, but not as much as I was hoping to. And I compared it to another film that I'll be mentioning in a bit that does exactly the same thing. I think it's got a great first act. The second act is not as bad as it could be. The third act is a mess. They just don't know how to get out of this, and it kind of makes no sense. I appreciated the theological discussion that's going on in that first 45 minutes, exactly the way Howard described it. It sounds to me like we've got a theology instructor who is preaching his theories to his class, and that's kind of interesting. And if you haven't been in college for 50 years, which I haven't, it's kind of interesting to listen to and go on. But all of the points that have been raised, I have no doubt, have been addressed by a variety of theologians in more intelligent ways than a couple of girls who happen to be Mormon missionaries are going to be able to come up with answers for. And even then, I thought that they came up with some pretty good answers when they finally do start responding to those points. I like the fact that, well, you've ignored all the differences, and holy criminy, that one's got a bird head. I thought that was an interesting reaction to some of the comparisons that are being made. We'll get into some details about some of the theological comparisons that are being talked about, because I like games and music, and that's going to have to come up as part of the conversation. But the scenario, I think, is great. The idea of going in the house, that's what that whole little preview section is about. The two girls are, they're friends, but they're a little bit competitive about their situations, and the one girl hasn't converted anybody yet. She's way behind, and she's willing to make a deal.
Right.
She's like the devil who went down to Georgia. She's the missionary who went to Hugh Grant's house. So she was willing to take a chance in stepping in and following through. And then once they get there, I think it's like Howard said it, the students can't say very much because they're afraid they're going to fail. They're in a situation where they're not sure if they're going to provoke some insane reaction from this guy, which they don't, they finally do get to the point where they say, doesn't matter, we're going to get an insane reaction one way or the other.
Plus, it's Hugh Grant, and he has this long rom-com history.
Yeah. Yes, and if they've been seeing any of those movies, they'll be saying, oh, it's all going to turn out well in the end. Sandra Bullock will come back.
He may stutter a lot, but he'll do the right thing.
So, like I said, we'll get into more detail. I like the film, but not as much as I wanted to. Before we get to plot points and have to deal with potential issues of spoilers, let's talk a little bit about the characters and the performances. Did you think that they were believable? Did you think the actors did a competent job? We've talked a little bit about Hugh Grant here. Maybe that's a good place to start. Nicole, you seem like you were kind of positive on Hugh Grant's performance here. Was he up to snuff?
I would say yes. I like Hugh Grant in this because he's playing a sinister character. And when I think of Hugh Grant, I don't usually picture him as a villain in my mind. So I think he pulled it off well in making Mr. Reed someone that, I think I mentioned this, but for someone that I would love to hate. And since this is a psychological movie and Mr. Reed comes off to the outside world as a normal, easygoing person, I also think that this was an easy role for Hugh Grant to play, since he still gets to smile and be clever and funny, like, those songs that he's singing in some of the scenes. And even though the plot of the movie isn't funny, he doesn't necessarily have to step too far out of character to play the bad guy. So I liked him.
Okay.
Shout out to Hugh.
James, you seem like Hugh Grant was one of the things that you did like about the film. Did I get that right?
I usually like Hugh Grant, just because I like his twitchy manner. And it seems unrehearsed, but I'm sure he goes into a lot of parsing on his script by putting dashes in between syllables in his script. This is lovely. And it kind of plays into the wheelhouse of where he, in his Bridget Jones Diaries, toxic male persona, where he can be seen as an extraordinarily repulsive male, and he's played theology students before, so Sense and Sensibility. So he's great. I thought he was wonderful in this role. In fact, the places I was smiling was usually when Hugh Grant was on the screen, which is, except for his feet, most of the time.
Howard, you were probably sounded the most negative about the film. Were you still positive about Hugh Grant, or do you think that this was a little too mannered or too obvious casting against type?
Well, I think it was obvious casting against type, but that's not a bad thing. I think here it's a good thing. He's very well cast. He doesn't really do any more than be Hugh Grant. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that. A lot of actors generally play a certain kind of themselves on screen, and he's very good at that here. I think, he's very well cast. One of the nice bits of editing and directing is very early on, they will have close-ups of his face, and the audience is going, oh, there's something wrong here. There's something really wrong just from looking at his face. And you also realize, well, the two girls aren't going to notice, but we know there's something wrong with this guy. So I think he's very good at being Hugh Grant, yet there's something in the back of his eyes. So when you do close-ups, you're going, oh, there's something wrong. I think the two girls are very good. They don't. What's nice about it, and I think James said something about it in regard to Hugh Grant, is there's an improvisational feel. Mm-hmm. The dialogue, especially in that opening scene, and how they talk to each other, and which is, I think, rather nice. I think they're really good. They don't really exactly shine, maybe because they're not familiar actors or something, or they're stuck in the roles that aren't as interesting. Even Topher Grace might be a little bit more interesting than the girls are, but I think they do a rather good job overall.
Lisa, you were most enthusiastic so far about the movie. How are you feeling about Hugh Grant and about the two ladies?
Oh, I do. I still think that this is amazing. And I recognize what people don't like about the movie. And I think being such a horror fan, I'm so used to things falling off in the third act that it doesn't bother me anymore. Most movies, I say you can't judge a horror movie by its ending because most of them are terrible. But I absolutely adore what Hugh Grant has done. And, the previous lambs over here have talked about this already, but this idea that he's using the charm that made him a star and completely wielding it as a weapon. I think about Hugh Grant in Notting Hill. And, he's got this floppy hair and he's kind of goofy and he can't get out of his own way. And I always go to the scene where he's trying to climb up over a fence and he keeps saying, whoops-a-daisy. And Julia Roberts' character makes fun of him for it. And then he matures a bit. And like James said in Bridget Jones's Diary, he's kind of that guy who knows how to use that charm and is really working his way through it to get what he wants. Whereas here, he's just malicious. And I think that I just delighted so much in seeing that same dopey grin and knowing how much venom is behind it. And I think what the girls have done is really encapsulated what it's like to be a young woman in the world, dealing with a threat that they recognize, but feeling the pressure to buck up and get through it. If you've ever listened to the My Favorite Murder podcast, you've got two women, Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark, who have just created this empire in this idea of women being afraid of offending someone. And they've got kind of a motto of, I'm not going to say it full on, but, F politeness. If you're afraid for your life, it doesn't matter what they think. Who cares if they think you're rude? If you're rude, you get up and you leave. And these girls don't want to do that because they have been raised to respect their elders. They have been raised to pledge the word of God and to make sure that they expand to people who are curious knowledge about what they do and who they are. And throughout this entire thing, there is more than one moment where you see the fear in their eyes and they want to go, but they know they shouldn't, and therefore they won't. And I felt that so strongly, this tension that comes from not trusting your gut and not trusting their instinct and ending up in a really horrible situation as a result. And the cinematography, these tight close-ups, you feel claustrophobic the entire film. Every time they move a room, you've got this maze of a house and you can't tell where they're going, and not at any point do you feel safe. Because you're so firmly aligned with these girls who are just afraid to say, and even when they do say, we're going to go now, they still can't get out. And I just found that to be absolutely brilliant.
Lisa, I think you besides describing a portion of my dating life, you just described one of the main reasons that drew me to this film and wanting to go see it in the first place, besides it being a Hugh Grant movie. As someone who was raised by a religious family in the church, much like Sister Paxton in particular, I do like the other sister in that she has Sophie's character Sophie plays. She has a more of a, like, she's less of a convert. She has more of a rebellious nature to her, or at least that's how I perceived her when I saw it. But in being raised by a religious family and a mother who always taught me, like, just don't be a good girl.
Absolutely.
And be a good little girl. There was different dynamics that drew me to the film. The religion and being female, or and being a woman, in that I used to question things when I was a kid growing up about the Bible or about the religion that I was raised in, and the adults around me told me to shut up. Like, how dare you, how dare you do this? Going to church was mandatory. I had to go. You had to go every single Sunday.
Same.
I also had to go to Sunday school. I was also in the choir.
Yep,
and I
me
was
too.
I sung in the choir, in a gospel choir, up until my 5th or 6th grade year, I think. And so I was taught that you don't question, like, this is what it is, this is the truth, and how dare you question anything. And as an adult, although I have since transitioned into a different religious practice by trying that out, I do still gravitate towards certain elements of the religion that I was raised under. I still listen to gospel music or what have you. Although I'm not much of a praying person, I have found myself praying in the recent workplaces that I've been to help get me through the day, because I'm in a toxic work environment or what have you. But I've also, in being taught, don't say anything, there have been a lot of times in my life where I feel like something is off. But I still play the game. Like, I still don't.
You still
don't
default to being polite. Right?
Yeah, I don't ruffle any feathers. Yeah, just like those girls, particularly Sister Paxton, because she seems to be the one that wants to be more polite than Sister Barnes. Is it?
Yeah, Barnes.
In the movie, yeah.
And I mean, we've got these girls who are coming from a patriarchal religion, as a lot of, Western religions are. And this idea that you're going to defer to the man of the house, and like their youth is in their way, their gender is in their way, their religion is in their way, their ambition is in their way. And there's so many different things that keep them in that house. I mean, we know the second they cross the threshold, they're doomed anyway. But just the fact, like, you watch it from the moment he invites them in, and you can see that they don't want to go in the house. And it's such a difficult thing to try and raise children. I mean, I don't have kids, but if I did, I try and talk to my students and say, like, you should listen to people, give people the benefit of the doubt, whatever. But I mean, I also have to get into, you have to trust your instinct, because if there's something in your gut that's telling you it's wrong, again, F politeness. You have to keep yourself safe, and you have to go with what your gut is telling you. And these girls don't. And, it's not like it's saying, every time that you have that feeling that it's going to be this horrible heretic situation. But, that's, you hear story after story of women who trusted their gut and got out of a bad situation. And thank goodness they did.
Yeah, the girls are having a little bit of trouble listening to The Gift of Fear. It's
Yes.
exactly
Which is why I stopped liking them. Like, there were points in this movie where I got angry with them, actually, and this could be because I'm a city girl. Like, there are certain things that they were doing in this movie, and I wanted to yell at the screen because I thought it was stupid. Like, why would you even, go further into a situation where you feel like something's off, though? There were some choices that they made in the film where I wanted to yell at the screen and call them nasty words, but I was in one of the nicer theaters in my town, and I decided to be a polite American citizen and not speak. It was quiet, but they pissed me off a few times with some of their decisions.
like a lot of horror films, people are making bad decisions,
Like, you stupid person.
Let's
girl.
Let's run upstairs. Never run upstairs.
Let's run to the garage with the chainsaws.
Yes,
exactly, instead of the running car.
The phone commercial.
But I mean, again, like, it's easy to say, sitting from the comfort of your couch or sitting from the comfort of a movie theater, that in a blind panic, you're going to take a moment and carefully think about which direction you should run. Like, I mean, it's Monday morning quarterbacking. There's no perfect way of doing it.
There is an element to that as well, but again, as someone who grew up in the city, like in my town, people are shooting people in my town. There's violence, there's crime. So there are certain things that I know if I walked up to 10 people, if I walked out of my apartment right now and walked up to 10 people and gave them a scenario and said, you're in the house, this has happened, this is happening, would you do this next? None of them would say that they would do some of the things.
Of course.
None of them would make some of those choices because you already have kind of not a paranoia, but you're already you're already wary of, like, this could go left at any moment. And like, no.
And some of that is a healthy paranoia. I have a friend who makes fun of me because I'm uncomfortable sleeping with my windows open if my bedroom's on the first floor. Yeah. And she thinks that I'm being paranoid. I went, well, you know what? It only takes one time. And I'd rather be paranoid and be safe than some of the other things that I've read about. And, it's like, you know what? Who's to say? The bedroom windows face a dark area. I'm not going to risk it, thanks. You can make fun of me all you'd like.
Yeah, having lived in Los Angeles in the era of the Night Stalker,
This is what I'm saying.
not at all, going to judge somebody who says, let me close the windows at night, especially on the first floor, because you know what? Mm-hmm. There's a reason that people have that anxiety. It happens, though. It doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen frequently. It happens more frequently than we wish it would, but a lot of crime is just an opportunity. Somebody comes up and rattles the door.
Absolutely.
They walk down the street and they check to see if your car is locked. And, if your car's not locked, they see that as an invitation to help themselves to whatever you've got in there. That's why you lock the door of your car when you walk away. Not because you assume everybody's going to steal from you, but because you know that somebody would, and you just want them to move on.
It's a matter of speed. Anything that slows them down, they're not going to want to deal with.
It's always one of those things when people put themselves in the position of the characters in the movie. You ask, how would I handle this? What would I do? And I'm just not sure that it's practical to say, well, I'm just going to continue to sit in the living room and not move anywhere, even if nobody comes back out. I think there's a point at which you just say, I have to do something.
Right.
And the promise that the door is going to open in the morning, I wouldn't be believing any promises that were being made. The idea that that's actually going to happen and I can just wait it out. No, I don't think that's going to happen either. So you have to figure out what are your options. Now, I do think at one point, Sister Blake, she's the one who picks up the letter opener and says, there's a point at which I may have to make a decision. And
no pun intended.
Yeah. A decision, not an incision. That's a different word. And an acknowledgement that something may have to be done that is not what I want to do. And that's as close as they come to making Well, I won't say that, because there is a point at which she also says we're going to challenge him on his assumptions.
Right.
They were compliant and polite and listened to his BS for a period of time, and then there's a point at which she says what we have to do is we have to fight back psychologically. He's trying to manipulate us. We need to refuse to be manipulated. And I think that's, that kind of assertiveness is helpful in a situation like that. Although I didn't think that the second and third acts play out as well as they should, the consequence is that Sister Paxton takes that attitude, and
Right.
and that helps.
As someone who doesn't enter a room without looking for the exits, I spent a lot of that time looking for things that could cause all sorts of property damage. And nobody considered it, ever, in that movie.
Well, you got a lighted candle, you could start a fire.
Yeah, lots of things.
And later on, they of course are trying to get a hold of matches. Apparently, they have never struck a match before because they can't get them to work.
Well, how often do girls that age strike matches against walls?
Yeah, that's a
like
little
they're
tough.
using the little box. So it's like I was okay with that
There are
too.
safety matches, you don't know.
Right.
Girl Scouts.
There you go.
Well, we are on the brink here of talking about the plot in a little bit more detail, and I think that we probably need to do that to be able to continue the discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and give anybody who's listening who hasn't seen the film and wants to know nothing about it, they want to take the Lisa Leaheey approach, don't watch the trailer, certainly don't listen to the podcast before you see the movie.
Hey, it's the best way to do it.
With all the spoilers in it. Here's your spoiler wall coming down right now. So there are things that we're going to be talking about in the next few sections that would probably be reveals that you might not want to know about. So proceed at your own risk. Choose that door only if you believe. Howard, we've kind of put you on the sidelines for a few moments. I think you had strong criticisms of the plotting of this film. Tell us what your reservations are.
He's going to do the Hitchcock plausible section.
No, I just don't understand the backstory here.
Of Hugh Grant's character?
Yeah.
Right. First of all, this house.
Oh, yeah.
is so huge with a basement that goes on forever. Did he build it? When did he build it? Who built it? He's been kidnapping women for a while, but there doesn't seem to be any mention of a serial person going around abducting women. How does he get them? These he got by asking them, by saying he has interest in the Church of Latter-day Saints, and they came, but did the others also come with what we call witnessing about their religion? And there's no consistency. It just is. And I don't know what his ultimate goal is. Does he really? It seems like it's all to do with this experiment of killing this woman and see if she comes back to life, and that would prove or disprove that there's a God. Now, in the first place, it doesn't. It's an experiment that will never prove anything. Is that what all this is about?
I don't think so.
No.
If so, then why this big religious debate at the beginning? Their attitude is irrelevant to his experiment. He just wants to kill a woman and see if they'll come back to life.
No.
I guess he says something about if they have enough faith, that will bring her back to life. But that's as preposterous and ridiculous and stupid as anything he's doing. Nothing makes sense after this. His motivations, his reasons, what he's doing, why he's doing it, how he's managed to get away with it for such a long period of time. What has he gotten away with? He does this thing where the woman supposed to come back to life, and he's taking the reaction of the two missionaries, and then it turns out that it's all a fake, that she didn't die, or did die, but was replaced by another woman, so he already knew ahead of time. that it was a fake experiment. So if he knew it was a fake experiment, why is he doing it at all?
Well,
nothing made sense.
Well, I think the whole point is that he presents it all as an experiment, but it isn't. It's just an exercise in control, and that's
in tormenting these girls.
Yeah,
yes.
and being the sadist that he is. I'm going to have power over you. I'm going to be God. I'm going to be the one in charge.
Yeah,
I have control.
And then he's going to rip it out from under them.
And none of your choices are real choices.
Right. He's claiming that. Go ahead.
It just doesn't. No, sorry. It just doesn't hold
Well,
water.
I didn't say it held water. I'm just telling you what I think is going on.
As I said, I would dare anybody to write this backstory.
Yeah.
Of everything leading up to these events before they happened, of his fixing this house up, of his psychological issues, of his kidnapping these women over and over again, how he does it and how he gets away with it, and this insane ideas he has when it comes to religion. If all he's after is after control, then again, why this big religious debate at the beginning? I mean,
maybe it's a reaction to his mother, who is, Piper Laurie, and he has to. And his way of rebelling is by, demeaning and getting rid of any theological realities and showing them to be mythological entirely. And he became a cloistered
missionary.
What's that?
But what about the other women that he's kidnapped? He has like 6, 7, or 8 of them in cages.
Yeah, well, he's got all those Jehovah Witnesses and Girl Scouts that came to his front door. Not to mention
census takers.
At that point, it all falls apart. Yeah. Because once the police start investigating, they'll say, they all disappeared after this house.
Why would they know that house?
Well, because it won't be hard to find. I mean, for example, they're on a list.
Well, I mean, Howard, you're asking for explanations. Give us time to explain.
Yeah, but, there's always going to be.
I did ask, and I'm trying to respond to your question.
But what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted an answer to your question.
No, well, I'm pushing back where, it's not a perfect thing, but part of this isn't about that. It's if you want to look at this and say, okay, how haven't the police gotten to this house yet? Well, you're assuming that everybody knows that they've tracked out which houses they're going to go to. This is a house way off the beaten path, not to mention in an area that's way off the beaten path. I mean, the fact that they're carrying these bikes up these levels of stairs alone made me go, nope, I'm not into this at all. Who's to say that this is a house that's on a major space, that, who's to say who's knocking on the door? Who's to say that it's all missionaries? There's a lot of variables here that I think you can get around. Is it perfect? No. But I do think that, for me personally, and this is going to aggravate the hell out of people, I don't care about the backstory. I'm just fascinated by this story from the beginning of this story to the end. But in coming up with, okay, how is this possible? We don't know where his women have come from. He could be going out getting runaways for all we know. We don't know how he's getting them. We just know how he's gotten these two. So I think that's something that you might be putting, or at least in my opinion, are putting way too much focus on for the context of what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, but the elder found the house, so,
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
But the elder found the house, so
yeah, because they have a list of places.
They
have
did.
A list of places they were going.
I agree. They did. And that I completely agree with you because they made that very careful. But the elder was completely useless in the end about it.
Yeah, but he's eventually going to go to the police.
There may be follow-up at some point or other.
Look into this.
Especially
it's a real fault on Hugh Grant's part.
And that's exactly how people get caught, because eventually they get arrogant about it and then they make the mistake. So the assumption is that every woman before them was somebody that somebody would have missed, whereas most serial killers and most serial abusers pick people who won't be missed to begin with. So we could certainly posit that this would be the case that eventually screws him, not to mention the fact that they survived. But the idea that the elder comes looking for them. The elder knows this particular house. That I'm totally on board with. But the number of stories and killers in the past who start with runaways and people that nobody is looking for absolutely could come up with where he's getting this group of people that he's holding.
Well, we can sort of debate that. I'm not sure that's totally accurate in the history of serial killings. The reason why I focused in on the backstory is because the part of it that interests you guys stopped being interesting to me 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. When I talk about religion, when I talk about the existence of God, I'm way beyond the stupid arguments that Hugh Grant is making. They're not people, as I said on Facebook, everybody's saying, oh, this brilliant debate, this brilliant theological debate. And I'm going, no, it's a very amateurish theological debate that's 50 years or more out of date. So since that no longer interests me, then I start focusing on this backstory, and I'm going, none of this makes sense. There's just no way any of this will all fit together. If I was really interested in the theological debate and the dynamic there, I probably would say, yeah, who cares? But I'm going, shoot me before this debate gets over, because it's so boring and so outdated and so uninteresting to me.
How can you say that when it features Radiohead?
That's when Richard woke back up. I mean, I don't disagree with you there, Howard. You're right. It is one of those things that's been over and over and over and over again. It works because these girls haven't heard it. And it's like this element of, I think, again, our experience of having seen all of these films, and you guys have living through various generations of this debate coming up again and again and again and again. I absolutely agree with you there. No, because it is like you sit there and you go, all right, this is a little drawn out. I go to it as I think he's a very well-read, learned individual that would have catered his arguments and his, pontification on whomever was in front of him. I don't know that every person who came to the door would have gotten a religious tirade, is my point.
Yeah,
we don't know if any of the other people were there for religious reasons at all.
Yeah,
That's the other odd thing. If you're saying that he's just kidnapping women that nobody knows or nobody cares about, then why does he even have this religious argument prepared to the degree that he does? This is something he does on a regular basis.
Sure.
The way it sets up that he presents his arguments, he's bringing people on a regular basis to do this. So I don't think these people that he gets there are going to be people that nobody cares about or is missing. They're all people he's carefully selected to do this theological argument against. And that's just not anybody. You don't get runaways for that. You don't get prostitutes for that. You have to get church-going religious people. And they're going to notice that these people are missing because they're not people that nobody cares about. They're members of the middle and upper class, and they're white. And
I agree with you there.
On that.
But I don't see that every conversation he has is religious. I think it's because I have a specific person that I know who will go into historical discussions like this at the drop of a hat and will change them to fit whatever historical context he knows about. And so I think that's what's happening. That I know somebody who can do this with religion. I know somebody who can do this with history. I know someone who can do this with music. And it's all the same person. So it's like whatever it is that he's getting them in the door with, I can come up with somebody who would do this.
And we do know that he's got interesting improvisational skills because he does come up with a quick way to try and rationalize something that they discover later on. That it doesn't get believed, I think, is probably because we have more contemporary, non-crazy people as part of the story as well. But I do kind of agree a little bit with Lisa that there seems to be he seems to be adaptable to the audience that he happens to have. Look, the idea that it's all plotted ahead of time it's completely possible, but indicators that it's not. Look, he has to chalk write the doors belief and disbelief. Otherwise, he'd have had a little sign made up for him, and probably had a little icon on them too to go along with it. but he is well prepared for the one, at least reasonably well prepared. I do agree that the argument is a little bit thin, but it's easy for him to reach into the cabinet and pull out the games, or to turn on the stereo
board games, right,
and play the music and
well,
make the comparison.
That's my issue. That's why I don't think it's improvised. I think it's the same every time. He just doesn't have a monopoly when.
Yeah, but he knows they're coming
game.
in this particular case.
But they're already there.
By the way, we should all be in the story. We should all be in the story meeting before this movie gets made, so that we could fill in all these holes and figure out what issues are. I'm sorry, Nicole, you had something that you wanted to say earlier, and I think you got pushed aside, and I'm sorry about that. Do you remember what it was that you wanted to say?
No worries, Richard. I'm loving this. This is all great. This is all great stuff. I just I sort of got off track in whatever it was I wanted to say, but I know it was in relation to the backstory discussion that Howard and Lisa were having, and I think I fall somewhere in the middle, where if the movie had a backstory, I would be interested, but I don't necessarily care if it doesn't, similar to Lisa. But I kind of just made one up in my mind as I was watching it based on what the film presented to me. And I took Mr. Reed to be someone who, like some of you have already mentioned here, who was very knowledgeable, but I saw him as someone who had as a control freak, as a weird, strange guy who's a control freak with a God complex, and he happens to have a bone to pick with organized religion. And because he expressed receiving more information about learning about the Church of Latter-day Saints, I took that to mean, by the time those women in the cages showed up, I took that to mean that he was targeting either specific groups, specific religious groups, or that specific church at the time. So all of the women in the cages, to me, I perceived them to be previous people who showed up to his door to provide them with information about either the Church of Latter-day Saints or some other organized religion. Maybe not Scientology, I don't know, but I know
Krishna, Scientologists,
yeah,
Seventh-day Adventists,
I
Jehovah's
just
Witnesses,
all of
people who do this proselytizing kind of thing.
Right. So I thought if you have a bone to pick with religion, then you're going to probably fill out a form to get, to tell them to add you to your their mailing list or something. So you're going to expect them to show up.
And
so you're going to be ready for them.
He's filling in his bingo squares.
Yeah. Although I do want to give a shout out to the Jehovah's Witnesses, as someone who grew up with, I have a friend whose family, they're Jehovah's Witnesses, and I noticed, and it could just be them, but I noticed that they always traveled in groups. So yes. I didn't see them where it was always like a handful of them. And I think that Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton could learn a thing or two from Jehovah's Witnesses, maybe, in that you don't make your next move unless you have a squad with you that can handle the situation that you're going into. But that's kind of the backstory that I made up in my head based on what was going on in the movie. Like, okay, he, somehow expressed interest in having people show up at the door, and maybe... Can you make sure that they're women? Yeah, I was going to say, maybe he's only kidnapping the women or something. The Elder Kennedy did annoy me a bit, but in that he seemed too trusting. But that's also the case with Sister Paxton. Both of them seemed too trusting for me, which then ties back to religion. A lot of times it's you have you give, like one of you said earlier, you give people the benefit of the doubt. And so the elder Kennedy just took Mr. Reed for, he just took him for his word. Like, okay, well, and then he left, and, no question about it. And that is concerning for me. But that's the backstory. That's what I was going to say earlier with regards to the backstory. I just filled in I fabricated a backstory in my mind based on what I was watching as I was sitting in the theater.
I only want to add real quick, not to the argument, but Richard, you said something about you'd like to be on the pitch meeting for this.
Oh, the story meeting, because we've got obviously a lot of plot holes and issues that you need to deal with.
For those who aren't familiar, I highly recommend a YouTube channel called Pitch Meeting.
Yes.
And the person who creates it plays both the screenwriter and the producer.
They're
and the
hilarious.
And the screenwriter is, telling him the story, and every single possible flaw in a movie is just shredded with hysterics. It's just
Does he have one for this yet? I can see one probably coming.
This one would be epic. CinemaSins will do this one too.
No, it doesn't. But I'm sure it's going to be incredibly easy, barely an inconvenience for him to do it. That only means something if you watch Pitch Meeting.
No, I've seen some of those episodes. Yes, this should be subject to plenty of ridicule on that channel.
I feel like it might be coming because his most recent one is Venom. Well, he's got like some of the older ones, but as far as like current films, he's got one for Venom: The Last Dance. He's got one for Beetlejuice. I can imagine this one may be coming soon enough, as soon as he sees it.
Well, it's made enough money, and it's apparently a big success.
Yeah.
That I bet he.
Well, let's move on. We've been talking about the plot quite a bit, and one of the things that I do think we do need to talk about, this is a horror film, so let's talk about whether or not it's frightening. Does it in fact accomplish its goal? I'm going to start by saying that first 45 minutes I had a feeling of dread that was really solid. That's the thing that pulled me into the film, because whether or not the religious theological discussion is sound or not, you know that these girls are in danger, and you can see how he's trying to manipulate them, and you can see how they're thinking about the danger that they're in, but not sure what to do about it. And like I said, right up to the point when they go down the stairs, I felt dread the whole time. Once they got down the stairs, to me, the dread disappeared. It became a very conventional kind of story after that. And there was nothing after that except maybe a jump scare that I would say was frightening. James, how do you think? What did you feel about it?
That was exactly what I thought. The tension that one naturally gets in a vulnerable position, and being subjected to mansplaining for 45 minutes, that does make you sweat a little bit. But once, the argument has been made and they start opening the door and going down the stairs, neither of which is a good choice, and they're the same choice, if we're going to be spoilerific about it, it just falls apart right on down the line. I don't even think that he could have pulled off the body switch that was done, given their proximity to where everything was. It would have been impossible, just impossible, because they had to move that. They had to move that table. That makes a noise.
Yeah,
and
it's a
they
little.
had to do it quickly.
I won't give away any secrets. Having worked on the stage with a magician, there are ways to do those things, but it does seem difficult to believe that one of the women that he uses in this subterfuge would be able to accomplish that given their conditions. I think that makes it a little improbable that such a thing's going to happen. Lisa, I was thinking of a movie that you liked, as I recall, that you liked quite well. The big comparison that I was making as I was watching this was to Barbarian.
Oh, I love that film.
Yeah,
I do.
And I really felt the same way, like I said, about this that I felt about it Barbarian. I thought the first act is brilliant. You know, it works really well. In Barbarian, I thought it all started falling apart in the second act, and the third act was a complete idiocy. This one, I didn't feel like it was complete idiocy. I just felt that it doesn't quite work. So I didn't have quite the same negative reaction that I had to the other one. But do you see, like you said, you don't judge a horror film by its ending. Did you find it frightening at all?
I don't find anything frightening, so that's not a good question to ask me.
I know that that's not true because it's public interaction is what you find frightening.
This is true. I don't like being out and I don't like talking to people. So, you know, I do a podcasting and I teach for a living. But no, I mean, I don't like getting up early. So clearly I've made fantastic decisions in my life. No, I mean, I don't have there's not much that I'm going to be, you know, I can't come up with things that give me nightmares. I can't come up with things that like really, you know, freak me out. I mean, there will be things in the moment that I don't care for. Like I don't like things with fewer than 2 legs and more than 4. But when it comes to this, no, I don't see this as a movie that's going to scare people. But like James had said, it's all about the dread. And my thing with the dread and where it disappears when you guys are talking about how once they get into the basement, the dread is gone. Yeah, because now the veil has been lifted. Up to that point, there was always a chance. As slim as that chance was, there was always a chance that he was telling the truth. And one of those doors might have led to a way out. Or there might have been somebody actually, like there might have actually been a wife, or there might have been this or that. And that's what he's hanging his hat on when it comes to these 2 naive girls who are just, and frankly, you know, Sister Barnes isn't naive, and yet she knows that they're in a bad position and they have to just keep moving forward in order to get out. And so, no, I don't see this film as being scary, but what I find fascinating is how claustrophobic you feel in a house this size. You're caught in a maze that you're not going to get out of. And I found that interesting. I love Barbarian from beginning to end just because of how bonkers it absolutely is. I also love that Barbarian's trailer that I saw after the film gives you nothing. And I think that's beyond exceptional in this day and age. When it comes to this, yeah, the third act is not my favorite. It, I think, gets cheap, and I think that this idea of, oh, he's got women in cages and suffering situations that he's using as part of his power. Okay, fine. You know, that's very run of the mill. I don't think the story is exceptional here. I think the performances are exceptional. I think the camera work is outstanding. So yeah, when you get to the ultimate end of this and how much suspension of disbelief are you willing to put into it? Well, as a horror fan, I'm good at the suspension of disbelief. And I think that's why my tolerance is generally higher to silly situations. I recognize that they're silly. I recognize that Barbarian is a complete chaotic mess, but I love being surprised, and that film surprised me over and over and over and over and over again. That's what I enjoy. So, you know, I know that I'm a little offbeat in some of the things that I like and some of the things I'll accept. But no, this isn't a film that I would tell people, be careful, you might be afraid of it. It's all in how you're watching things unfold, I think. And it really does come down to Hugh Grant. I don't know that somebody could do this as well as he did.
All right, that seems reasonable. We're going to kind of wrap this up, and I want to give everybody a chance to talk about anything about the film that we haven't had a chance to talk about or that you wanted to get off your chest or wanted to ask about. So, James, have you got anything else that you wanted to add before we close the books on this and go out the back door?
Not really. Other than the fact that the 2 lines at the end, whereas the one true religion is control, and she asks him, why are you doing this? And he says, the question is, why are you letting me do this? You know, you could have put that an hour earlier in the movie, and it would have had the same impact. It's one of those things where you just think that whole section is wasted.
It does make you wonder. Like, he must have been flabbergasted that she did keep letting him do all of these things that far into the film. He's
Obviously
like, how
not.
the far is she going to let me go?
So much. He's got the evidence right there in the same room with her.
Nicole, do you have anything that you want to add or ask?
Sure. He was talking about iterations in this movie, and I was surprised to learn that a song that I thought was an original song in a short film that I watched just a month ago from the Netherlands is a Radiohead song. So the Creep song by Radiohead that was referenced and that played in this movie is a song that I heard in a short film called I'm Not a Robot, directed by Victoria Wardmerdam, I think. It's about a woman who repeatedly fails a computer security test and suddenly her humanity is called into question. So I saw that short film about a month ago, and there are like girls singing the song, I think, or something. Like, it sounds like little kids are singing the song. So I thought, oh, this is an interesting song. Like, I thought it was made for that short film, only to then hear it in this movie and learn that song was an iteration of Radiohead's Creep. So I thought that was interesting. That's all. Now I have to, check that song out on Spotify or somewhere.
Howard?
The Hollies.
The Hollies, yeah. Air That I Breathe. And wasn't there a third song that they made a reference to also?
Lana Del Rey, yeah.
All right. Howard, do you have anything else that you want to add? You would, had a lot of things that you talked about.
I've yelled enough, I guess.
I like the nod to the song iteration thing in the credits, right? When you get Mazzy Stars Fall Into You with, oh crap, what the heck was the song that played before that?
Creep?
No, it was Knockin' on Heaven's Door.
Oh, yeah, Knockin' on Heaven's
Door. So
Door.
Knockin' on Heaven's Door comes up, and then Fade Into You by Mazzy Star comes up, which is clearly saying, like, see, this one has the same rhythm there, and they play with it even into the credits.
All right. Well, I had an issue that when I walked out of I went to the movie with my daughter Amanda, and we're talking about the ending of the movie, and we had completely different interpretations of what was going on, and I wanted to see if anybody else had a different interpretation of what's going on, because my interpretation is she's dead, and that this is just the afterlife moment that she's having, because when she told the story about the butterfly earlier in the film, she said that way I would know it was me.
Yeah.
Or it's Barnes.
Well, that was my daughter's interpretation, that it was Barnes showing up, and I'm going, yeah, I don't think she's getting out of this. By the way, Lisa, we've had this talk before about
Chekhov.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Chekhov.
Blank spot.
Chekhov's butterfly.
In this particular case, it was Chekhov's three-nailed board.
Yes, it was. I absolutely had that thought too.
And I thought about that, but the idea that Barnes has survived long enough to save Paxton in that situation, and
that was the worst part of the whole thing,
right?
For me.
Which is why I believe that she's dead, that this thing is just her death dream.
That could be. I would like to see this again to think that through, because as aggravated as people have gotten with some of like the other situations and stuff, that Barnes still being alive, I was like, absolutely not. That's where
that was her
me.
Arya Stark moment.
I was like, give me a break. That's what pissed me off. So there you go, Howard. I do have a breaking point.
There you go.
All right. Well, speaking of breaking points, we've reached ours. So we're going to take a break here and hear from a fellow Lamb Podcasting Network show. But when we come back, we've got an exit question that everybody here has interesting answers to.
Hi, I'm Lisa Leaheey, and I'm the host of Pictures and Conversations, a rabbit hole book club. Each month on the 20th, I'm joined by a group of fellow book lovers, and we discuss a book in our typically nerdy fashion.
As we continue to not talk about the book that we're not supposed to talk about.
Anyway. I admittedly, too, I'm totally weird about the way I read things. Sometimes I just completely devour books, and I'm usually reading 3 or 4 at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I just pick up whatever strikes my mood. I have something I read before I go to bed at night. I read murder mysteries before bed.
But I liked it good enough. Like, no, it doesn't go super deep into developing these characters. Definitely not. Is it Harry Potter for adults? Absolutely not.
Anyway, you can find Pictures and Conversations, a Rabbit Hole Book Club podcast, anywhere you get your podcasts, or on our home website, rabbitholepodcasts.com.
I love that show.
It's always a good show. You know, all those Rabbit Hole podcasts are great. So you should show up and listen to that. The exit question of the week is simple. What actors have taken a role playing against their type? Obviously, Hugh Grant part as the villainous psychopath in this particular movie is what prompted this question. But instead of just who played against type and then face planted completely in doing so? And then as a complementary endpoint to that question, who do you think could pull off a role in some future film playing against their type? So, Lisa, did you have an answer to either of these questions?
I do. I actually have a couple answers to the first one, but the first one that really drove me nuts was Ryan Reynolds in the Amityville Horror remake. Uh-huh. Because, good God, was he awful in that? Although the movie itself was bad, so I don't know if you can entirely blame him. But I just thought that he did a terrible job playing George Lutz, and I didn't think that he really pulled it off. In fact, there's a scene where, you know, as he's gradually getting, you know, angrier and darker and whatever it is, he's outside chopping wood and he like really lays into his stepson. Well, he's not his stepson yet, but eventually. And like he's supposed to be really angry and really brusque and really over the top, and he sounds silly. You know, knowing Ryan Reynolds for who he is and especially where he's come since that particular film, I didn't think that worked. I was also really aggravated with Tom Hanks in The Circle. But again, another movie that was terrible, so I don't know how much of it I can blame on Tom Hanks. But Tom Hanks's character, which escapes me, you know, having read the book more than once, because I really enjoy Dave Eggers' novel, he plays a character who's very Steve Jobs-ish. And Hanks just doesn't pull that off. You know, he tries, he plays that Steve Jobs charm, but he doesn't have the kind of offbeat intellectual nature that I need in that particular role. This idea where he's so brilliant that he knows that he's got you, and you can't tell whether he's using it against you or is just glad you're along for the ride. It's such a nuanced kind of role that Tom Hanks doesn't fit in for me. As far as who I want to see play against type, I don't know if you'll indulge me because I'm going to cheat. There's a particular actor who has made a crap ton of money in the last, call it 20 some odd years, playing in comedies. I want John C. Reilly to go back to drama. I really don't like him in these comedy films. I understand that that's where he's making his money, but he used to play drama and he was so good, but unfortunately now he's making money being buddies with Will Ferrell, and I want him to go back. There's so many kids who have no idea that he can do dramatic roles. I kind of want to see him back there.
Oh,
so
I've got to point out 2 movies that are probably in the last 5 years that kind of contradict your position on this.
Yeah, but I don't think the kids would know it. So that's I think where I am.
You know.
And like I said, I am cheating with this one because he was originally there, and so it's not going against type because I couldn't come up with anything better. So I apologize.
The 2 films I was thinking of are The Sister Brothers, and which he's fantastic in.
Absolutely.
And Stan and Ollie, which he is also fantastic
in.
Yeah, and I agree with you because he does brilliant things in drama. Most people mainstream know him as these dopey comedies that I hate. So I want him to go back.
Okay. Nicole, how about you? Did you think of somebody that is face planted when they tried to play against type?
Yes, this was difficult actually, but I have two. Cuba Gooding Jr. I do think that he does good work, but he's no action hero. So I think that he face planted in the movie Chill Factor. Although, like one of Lisa's picks, that movie didn't do so well Chill Factor didn't do so well at the box office. So I understand if Cuba Gooding Jr. shouldn't get all of the blame, but I don't think that I don't see him as an action hero, so I don't think that was a good move for him. But I also didn't like Will Smith in Aladdin, even though he got, some good, I guess, reviews for that movie. I don't like him in that film. I think it's silly. That's all.
You're entitled to think that. My guess is a lot of people felt the same way because, like you said, it didn't do all that well. How about the other part?
I actually had several people that I thought could pull off a role in a future film playing against type, but I don't know if my answers would be fair since they've kind of already did this. When I think of people that could pull off a role playing against type, I think of Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Winslet, and the comedian Monique, as well as Queen Latifah. However, the one that tops all of that is Tom Cruise, since I think he did well in Tropic Thunder. And when I thought about this question, I remember when that movie came out and I saw it in the theater and he's dancing to a rap song by Ludacris, which seemed pretty funny. I remember everybody, like everyone in the audience, being very surprised to see him when he was revealed on screen. So because that was a surprise, I think Tom Cruise could do a good job playing against type.
All right.
So that's my pick.
I think that works. I think you're probably right. There are some things that he's still stuck having a hard time doing. The Jack Reacher character, I thought he was fine in the first one, but if you know the character from the books, he's not cast well. So that's one of those examples where it doesn't quite work. But I like the example that you just talked about as a comedy and as a kind of exaggerated character. I thought that worked really well in Tropic Thunder.
Yes, like no one expected, or at least in the theater, it's because they were vocal, like when he popped up, like no one expected to see him, and so yeah. I thought that was a good move.
Although he is trying to stretch, I notice in the trailer for the new Mission Impossible movie, he's not driving a motorcycle.
Well, I wouldn't at all be surprised that a motorcycle shows up, and I'm sure there'll be some running.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of running.
Both of them up a building.
Yes.
James, how about you? Have you got somebody that face planted?
Oh, gosh. Well, yeah. My obvious answer was John Wayne in Genghis Khan, but that's obvious.
It's kind of obvious.
Yeah. So I'll go with my next ones, which were two performances that just irritated me all the way through, and that was Leonardo DiCaprio as either J. Edgar Hoover or as Howard Hughes. Both of those just made me shrink because I didn't believe him in either role, and it's gotten to the point where I'm really skeptical going into a DiCaprio movie now.
I stayed away from the Hoover film because even though it's a Clint Eastwood directed movie, because I usually see those, but I could not buy what I was seeing in the trailers. It doesn't come across that way. The Hughes film, I thought, the younger version of Hughes, I could really kind of believe all of that. I didn't really have a problem with him, but I can see why you might see it as being a little bit problematic.
Yeah. And as far as somebody I'd like to see stretch, nobody's coming to mind. do I want to see Will Ferrell do a dramatic part? Well, he's done that. Do I want to see Tina Fey do a dramatic part? Not really. Steve Carell has done drama. I don't. There's nothing that comes to mind, because it seems to me that the people do try to stretch. So, like Bupkis, I got Bupkis, Sam Bupkis.
Okay, well, we'll be looking for that Sam Bupkis starring feature down the road here. Howard, how about you? You had a chance to think about this now. Did you come up with somebody that you thought maybe was trying to stretch and just obviously couldn't?
Well, I have someone that created an award I often give out every year, and it's the Pierce Brosnan Award for someone who can't sing being in a musical.
That's a great one.
And I will give it to Russell Crowe in Les Mis.
Mm-hmm.
The other winner is Helena Bonham Carter in Sweeney Todd. Brosnan, Carter, and Crowe just didn't have the chops, and it was painful at times to hear them sing. The one that I would really enjoy seeing is Tom Hanks doing something like Heretic. For a while, he was getting a little dull to me because he always plays these nice guys. And then he did this film, That Thing You Do, as well as the one with his son, the great Buck Howard, where he's sort of playing assholes. And he was so good. So instead of playing
I think
a
you're
nice
talking about
guy,
The Road to Perdition, not the great Buck Howard.
No,
the great Buck Howard. He plays Colin Hanks' father.
Oh, okay.
Very suspicious.
Yeah. I think he's rather good in Road Perdition too, but he's not for me, as unsympathetic as he is in Great Buck Howard or That Thing You Do. So I loved it when he did. Oh God, that's just a bad performance. If he sang, he would get my Pierce Brosnan Award. So I'd like to see him do something like Heretic, where he just goes all evil. He is just unrepentantly evil.
I would like
because I
to see
think
that.
he could do it.
Did you see the Coen Brothers version of The Lady Killers?
I tried. I gave up as soon as he comes on screen with that awful accent.
The must.
Good.
I said nope, and I changed channels.
Ye of little patience. All right, well, yeah. I have a couple of obvious examples of people who face planted, and I don't think that there was much surprise that one of them was going to face plant. The worst performance by an actress in the worst cast role in a James Bond film is Denise Richards as a nuclear physicist.
Oh my God, yes, that's such a great pull. Good call.
You know, she can barely pull off being a sex symbol.
She can barely pull off being Denise Richards.
She's just not a very good actress at all, and so casting against type here was a mistake. On the other hand, we have a very good actress who was cast against type and couldn't save the movie, and that's Michelle Pfeiffer in Frankie and Johnny, where the role is supposed to be, you know, world weary, worn out, kind of frumpy waitress. And who is playing this?
Even have dishpan hands.
Yeah, you know, it's Michelle Pfeiffer, and you're going, yeah, that doesn't work. You know, it just doesn't make it.
I'll actually defend that because it's based on a play, and they have almost nothing to do with each other. Terrence McNally sort of completely rewrote the play and created new characters. So instead of a movie about a guy who is a rapist, basically, he's much more sympathetic. And yeah, so as long as you can separate it from the play, which is totally different, I think she does a great job.
Well, you know, I'm sure that there are many beautiful waitresses out there in diners that I have not encountered. And when Michelle Pfeiffer is serving me in the next diner that I go into, I'm going to find her another job because she's clearly been cast in the wrong role. The actor that I thought I would like to see in something, different, try something different, and I think they could succeed in. I like Jason Statham as an action star. He was hysterical in Spy, where he's basically making fun of his action star, persona. I just think it would be interesting to see him as kind of a feckless character in a kind of a romantic comedy or a lighthearted story where maybe he's a philosophy teacher at a college who maybe gets involved in some kind of sex scandal that he has nothing to do with because he's kind of afraid of women and doesn't have the kind of confidence that's going on there. I just think that he's become a good enough actor that he could do something like that, and that would be the least likely thing that he would ever be cast in.
Let him do the Ralph Bellamy role.
Yeah.
Let him jump into like one of these Knives Out films, and I think that could be his bridge.
Yeah,
like you could put him in as one of those characters in Knives Out, and he could work off the rest of the cast. I think that would make it work.
I like that thought.
Yeah, give him a lot of pratfalls and physical comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, add that kind of stuff
Inspector Clouseau.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, I think that would make more sense than casting Steve Martin as Inspector Clouseau.
Oh.
All right. Well, it's that time we got to wrap things up here, and I want to give everybody a chance to share what they want people in the world to know about and take part in. So, Howard, what's new on Pop Art? What should people be listening for?
Well, nothing new, except, it's still the most recent one is the Halloween episode with Lisa Leaheey,
Hey, that's me.
Hello, Lisa. Where we did 10 Cloverfield Lane and Collector, both about women who have been abducted. Kind of interesting with this film that we did today. And then this Friday, I'll be recording the new one with Sammy Giuliano, where we're doing Ben-Hur and One-Eyed Jacks. They're both kind of Count of Monte Cristo type films where a friend betrays another and the other comes back for revenge.
James, I know you never want to promote, but I did read your comments on Heretic, and maybe you have something else that people might want to look at?
Do I?
I don't know.
No, I'm recording another podcast tonight for Forgotten Filmcast. It's going to be a couple of weeks before it airs, so I don't want to give anything away. But it's a forgotten film that nobody's probably heard of, and it's in the Western genre. And that's the only hint I'll give. There are things that I have high hopes for, but, as the week progresses and I don't write, then I don't, then I just don't fulfill my promises. So I don't want to promise anything. No.
I'm behind on my promises, so I understand completely what you mean. Nicole, how about you? You got something that people can turn their eyes or ears to?
I do, and it's not mine because I'm in the same boat as you guys. Nothing new like Howard, not wanting to make any promises like you and James. So, firstly, I do want to thank you, Richard, for finding the short film Mizuko on the Criterion channel, I think. I watched that, but I didn't pay for it. I watched it on the free trial. So I'm glad that I got that out of my hair. And that's it. I'll be doing some video editing. And so I think, everyone listening should check out the episode that Howard has with Lisa and support it. And watch the Lambcast on YouTube. Like and subscribe to the channel.
Oh, yes. I like that. Promote the YouTube channel. Thank you. Yes, everybody like and subscribe on the YouTube channel if you haven't done that. Lisa, which one of the shows or which shows from the Rabbit Hole podcast do you want to promote this week? And you're welcome to promote them all, by the way.
Well, so, what's cool about the Rabbit Hole Podcast Network is that we really do have something for everyone, and probably a couple of things. We keep adding new shows. There's a number of different things going on the network. I don't know how many of them I can actually release and talk about yet, but anyway, things are always happening. So check out rabbitholepodcasts.com. Check us out on Spotify. And if you like listening to me ramble on about things, you can check out Pictures and Conversations, a Rabbit Hole Podcast book club. We release episodes on the 20th of every month. And this month, we actually just recorded before this recording. We're talking about the new Jason Pargin book. And we have a lot to say. So if you want to listen to people carry on about a book they really didn't like, you get some good laughs out of this one. Because this book is complete chaos, and unlike Barbarian, we didn't like it. So it's kind of fun. Spoiler alert, we didn't like it. Have I mentioned we didn't like it? And then if you just want to find out what kinds of things we listened to this year, check us out in December as we kind of recap what we've read and what kinds of things we enjoy.
You know, I'm sure that it will make your hearts beat faster. It may even make you want to die to listen to it. On my site, as I said earlier, probably before the show started, I have a couple of movies that I still have to catch up posts on. Saw a couple of horror films, so those will be coming soon. James mentioned that he recorded an episode of Forgotten Filmcast that's coming up. I did the same thing on Friday night, so my episode will probably go up before James's, and I'm perfectly happy to tell you what it is, because Todd will have it up this week. It's for the 1974 action film Juggernaut, featuring...
I love that film.
Oh, good. Featuring Richard Harris and Anthony Hopkins in action man mode, so to speak. So they're actually, don't have any scenes together, but it works. It works pretty well. Yes, it's a very entertaining film.
Where did you see it?
Well, I saw it on my Kino Lorber Blu-ray. I'm not sure where Todd ended up seeing it.
It's not on Laserdisc, Richard? Come on.
No, I didn't buy it on Laserdisc. I'm not sure why I didn't do that I'm not even sure it was available on Laserdisc. I'm going to have to look for that.
I've suggested it to Jay a couple of times for the Deep Blue Sea podcast, but there's no place to watch it.
No place to watch it. Oh.
Yeah.
You might.
That's what I was wondering why.
Message Todd. He might have watched it someplace that is accessible. I, of course, just happen to own it. That's just me.
Yeah, I own it too.
That's the kind of crap that I
It's
buy.
a really good film.
Yes, it is.
It's one of the best disaster films.
Yeah.
Well, that was part of our discussion.
Now I definitely want to see it.
That was part of our discussion. Is it actually a disaster film or not? Because it may be mislabeled a little
disastrous
bit.
as earthquake, but.
Oh, I do like disaster movies. I got to dig this one up now.
And Ian Holmes in it, and Anthony Hopkins is in it,
Yeah,
and Shirley Knight,
Omar
Sharif.
Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
David Hemmings.
Isn't this where we get the Blue
Hoopla
Wire,
has
Red
it.
Wire
Wait.
thing?
Hoopla and Pluto both have it, Howard.
Oh, Pluto.
Oh, okay.
There you are.
Easy.
Yeah, Hoopla is through your library system.
I think
But
Todd
isn't
probably
this-
saw it through Hoopla then, because he always does that.
Oh, cool. That's
Is
what
this
I'm going to
the
watch
movie-
this week.
Is this the movie where we get the Blue Wire, Red Wire?
Yes.
Yes. That's been,
Done to
made
death
fun of
since. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
Danny.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming to the show this week. And I appreciate the effort that you made to see the movie. For the rest of your lives, there will be before you did this show, and there will be after you did this show. All right. So,
I just want to say, Richard, you made us do this. And we have to ask ourselves, why did we make you do this?
Because real devotion isn't preached, it's enforced.
Yes, there you go.
Thanks, everybody.
You've been listening to the Lambcast. If you have an idea for a show or would like to join us on the Lambcast, contact us at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Find us on Facebook. Just search for Lambcast. or on X, formerly Twitter, at Lambcast. And you can find us on YouTube as well. The Lamb site can be found at largeassmovieblogs.com. We'd also love it if you would leave a review on iTunes.